Welcome to Weird Hill to Die On, where we tackle life's biggest questions, wrestle with bizarre ideas, and try not to lose our sanity while navigating faith. I'm Mary Jo Sharp, and today's hill is the secret of great apologetics: low expectations. Yep, I said it, because somewhere along the way, we started expecting apologists to be human encyclopedias, flawless, airtight, and always ready to clap back with 5 syllables of Greek. But is that fair? Is it even biblical? So today we're talking about what we can realistically expect from apologists, how to spot the difference between confidence and overconfidence, and why a little humility might be the most powerful apologetic that we've got. Let's be real. Faith isn't about collecting trivia like it's Pokemon. It's about actually listening, growing, and figuring out how to follow Jesus in the middle of all the chaos. And honestly, some hills just aren't worth dying on. So if you're here to question, wrestle, or just enjoy some nerdy chit chat, you're in the right place. Hit subscribe, share this with your most overthinking friend, and let's get into it. Today, I'm not alone in this. I've got Phoenix Hayes and Adam Coleman here. These guys are like brainy rebels, always serving up sharp insights, questionable humor, bold opinions, and just enough wisdom to keep us from going off the rails. How's it going, guys?
Great. Ready to, what did you say? Nerd it out. Nerd it.
Nerd it out.
Get the nerd on.
We get our
Just enough wisdom. Yeah.
That's right. That's it. All right, guys. So today's subject matter about the low expectations we should have for apologists. Let's start with some scripture, shall we?
Okay.
All right. Proverbs 1:7 tells us that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Now, that does not sound to me like share your opinion and never back down. And then there's Proverbs 18:17 that says, the one who states his case first seems right until another comes and examines him. So how do these verses shape what it should look like to speak and reason well as an apologist? And I'm going to throw that over to Adam first.
Well, I think that, man, that's a really good question. I got to kind of chew on it a little bit. Well, I guess at the outset, kind of what I hear is like 2 levels of accountability, maybe, or humility. You know, on the one hand, like we need to be humble before God. Like, I mean, none of us is omniscient. None of us, knows it all, but he does, right? So, even the sharpest apologist has to bow his knee to an almighty God, which actually can, sound a little bit more cliche than it is, I think easy to pull off. Because, I mean, if you're in academic circles quite a bit, then it could be tempting to go with the scholarly consensus or, whatever the intellectually approved idea is at any given time. But nevertheless, God's truth should stand tall above, the opinions of our academic peers. And so, bowing our knee to God in that way, I think it can be a level of humility that may even come at some cost. It may cost you the approval and esteem of your academic peers. But then who do you fear more? Do you fear God or do you fear man? So I think that could come into play. And then I think when it comes to our peers, I mean, the reality is, again, like nobody knows it all. I think actually in a weird kind of a way, this may sound crazy. Maybe this is a weird hill to die on at the outset. I don't know. We'll find out. But I think that one of the ways that God keeps us humble and interdependent with one another is now allowing us to, any given person have all the answers. The fact that we have to wrestle with one another as believers, like within the body of Christ, the fact that we have to wrestle with one another, I think actually promotes a type of dependence upon one another that is maybe a greater good than having all the answers. So it's kind of like a check and balance maybe against being intellectually haughty. You know what I'm saying? So I think that when, in some sense, like the differences of opinion and maybe the intellectual imperfections that we try to shy away from maybe it's God has a bigger plan for it. Like maybe there's a reason that God allows for a certain level of it, because He wants us to wrestle with one another in a way that promotes a type of collaboration that we otherwise wouldn't have.
Yeah, that's so good. I've never heard it. I've never heard it presented that way, but that's so good. Um,
Hmm.
Certainly, often we get frustrated that the answers in the word aren't as clear cut, or it sort of lends to the whole divine hiddenness of God. Like, why isn't He more apparent to us, and why aren't His truths more apparent on certain issues? Some things are black and white, other things you do have to wrestle a little bit with. And for that, it does require that element of faith. If He was just there, well, now you have knowledge of God because you can just see Him. There's not so much of a need of faith. But this is the first time I've heard someone present the benefit of almost the internal and denominational disagreement, is the fact that we have to wrestle with each other a little bit. But if we could just do it better, so that people looking at the church see us arguing and disagreeing in a better way than the world, that would be wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I
I
mean,
love
yeah,
that.
be honest, the more I'm thinking about it, like I've lost several arguments with my wife. It's like, there have been several times when I thought I was absolutely right. I couldn't figure out how she saw something differently, and then we have a conversation, and it's like, oh man, like I messed up. But many times out of those conversations, there's been some other element of growth that's come out, like humility,
Yeah.
or just the ability to see things differently than I could before. So sometimes there can be these benefits to the friction that we just might
Yeah.
not appreciate at first. So perhaps, amongst the denominations, perhaps there's something going on there, I think maybe that's just the nature of relationships, that we grow in certain ways that we probably wouldn't absent a level of friction, that ironing sharpened iron, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good. I love that you brought in that the church community aspect, the body of Christ, and how we're supposed to be. I mean, we're not all going to be the same person, right? So we're going to see things different. We all have different backgrounds. We all have different lived experience. And so that the way that we're approaching things sometimes is, we can't just say everybody's going to have exactly the same view. And we grow in our maturity in Christ when we encounter differences of opinion. I love that.
Yeah.
I think that needs to be said more often, because as an educator, that's something that really is important to me. Having that educational background, I'm always like, well, let's figure it out together. But a lot of people want to say, well, maybe not a lot. Some people want to say, you have to see it my way. I'm right. Everybody else is wrong. And I'm like you. I think when we have to encounter ideas we disagree with, that it helps us, it helps us grow and mature, and maybe in ways we didn't even know we needed to.
Yeah.
Yeah. That notwithstanding, we might have to go back and delete that portion where I admitted that I'd lost to my arguments to my wife several times. I don't know if you might want that stricken from the record.
Adam's wife, I'm going to tell you, I'm leaving it in. I'm just that's great. I love it. So we've been kind of talking, we almost touched on this. We didn't quite get there, but is it possible to be confident in our faith without pretending that we have all the answers nailed down? How about Phoenix? You want to start this one?
Is it possible to be confident? Yeah, for sure. I would like to think I embody that confidence, because I 100% don't have all the answers at all, but I am confident in my faith. So I think the question is are we secure enough in our identity and in our sense of value that we don't feel like we have to prove we have every answer? That's the bigger question. Yeah. I know that so often people can't be corrected or can't be wrong because they've attached so much personal identity and value to what they think. And the sooner anybody, including myself, can move past that and separate who they are from what they believe, it's so much quicker and so much easier just to tease out ideas and toss certain ones aside and correct others and absorb others without feeling like we as people are being completely dissected. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah. Thinking on that, Adam, did you want to comment on that?
No, I'm kind of still chewing. I like what you said about differentiating between our beliefs and our identity. I think that's really crucial. I mean, I could imagine, any given apologist having kind of like their pet argument that maybe they built the platform around or something like that. You know what I mean? And if there's some chinks in the armor for that, then maybe it would be difficult to just lean into, where truth leads. But nevertheless, our identity is in Christ. And so you should be able to follow truth wherever it takes you, even if that means, that your favorite argument, you might need to modify or whatever. Does that make sense? Or
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Your identity is in Christ, not in your argument.
Yes, yeah.
You're bringing it there.
And sometimes you can still be absolutely convinced that what you hold to is true, and I don't mean in an arrogant way. You can be certain that the argument you're trying to make is still correct, but acknowledge that you're maybe not doing a very good job of proving that case. And at that point, you just, okay, let's retreat, let's rethink, let's reframe. I've messed up somewhere here in my power of persuasion by presenting a strong case, even if the underlying point still stands.
Yeah. I'm just getting excited about what you're talking about, because now you're starting to go into these areas of like image maintenance, especially when you're a platform speaker or you have a YouTube channel or whatever. And there is that sense of, now I have a piece of my identity that is in this and in this endeavor. And so there's that propensity to defend it, to defend that image. And really that comes back to, where is your security for your identity? Is it in Christ? So you guys are you're making such great points. I was just getting excited.
Oh, good. Thank you. We try.
I know. I love it. Yeah. And so on the theme of the show, like, we need to actually have some lower expectations that in our own field, right? That we're human. And you need to bring those expectations out. I've been on stage many times when somebody's asked me something and I'm like, I don't know. That's not an area I study, and I'm okay with it. I'm comfortable with that. And I think one of the reasons why is I've had some experience with it, because back when I was teaching band, you guys, band, in the public school, we do competition. And I remember I tried to challenge my students with hard music, because I love music. I didn't want to just be the best band and get all these accolades. I wanted kids to love music. So I'd give them harder stuff in middle school and expose them to different types of music. So we took one of those hard pieces to contest, and we got what's called a rainbow. So one judge gave us top grade, one gave us middle, and one gave us a lower. And usually you don't get that. That's weird. That means like something's off. Either you did a song that was too hard or whatever. So I remember feeling really bad about it. And an older band director said to me, well, the problem that I see is that you should never put your value in what a group of teenagers can do performance-wise on any given day. And I was like,
very fair.
Why have I never thought of that?
Just don't ever put your value in a teenager. Well, anybody else. But
pull it back to yourself as a speaker. You're human, right? You're not Jesus. So you should expect to fail on some days, right?
Big time.
That's true. Yeah. Well, yeah, I just think that's phenomenal, because I know that I've done that. I know that I've, gotten on stage and put so much pressure on myself to deliver the argument perfectly and to have an answer for every question. But the reality is, none of us we don't know it all. We're not perfect. There's always going to be blind spots. And I think that, I don't know why I keep coming back to humility. Maybe the Lord is trying to tell me something, but I feel like humility is always in order. Like, we can't take ourselves so seriously that we don't allow space for growth and just that human imperfection.
Yeah. I was going to say, there's just that odd paradox of the lower you see yourself, and not in a unhealthy way, but the lower your opinion and your sense of pride, those things, just, it's so freeing. It's so freeing to just stand up and say, guys, I suck, but I'm going to give the best that I can. And I'm bringing the best I can to you. I didn't, I put in the work and I'm going to give you my best.
Yeah.
But hey, like, I suck. That's why I follow Christ, because I need someone who doesn't suck to be my role model. And my gosh, that's so liberating to me. Yeah.
I love it. I'm gonna steer us a different direction here. Well, it's the same direction, but I'm gonna kind of put some psychological study with what we've been talking about. So I'm going to talk about a little bit about overconfidence. So according to the Dunning-Kruger effect, there's the people who know the least often feel the most sure of themselves. And so these two guys these two psychologists in 1999, they wrote about this, that when people with little knowledge or skill in something think they tend to think they know a lot about it. And that happens because they don't realize how much they don't know.
Right.
So I have found this to be a little more common in apologetics or theology spaces. And do you agree with that? Or why do you think, and if you do, why do you think that's so?
Yeah. Well, first of all, yes. Unfortunately, I felt kind of bad. I don't know if it's a bad thing. As you were describing the Dunning-Kruger effect, I was picturing specific people. Certain people came to mind. I don't know if that's better.
You shall not be named.
People that shall not be named. People that shall not be named. But yeah, I mean, so yes, in apologetic circles, I've seen it, particularly, I'll just say, among either young apologists or people who just recently got into apologetics. I think that can be pretty prevalent. And I think part of it is sometimes it's just excitement. Sometimes it's not even necessarily a pride thing. People are just excited about apologetics. They're really, they want to share it. They want to impact the world with it, impact their sphere of influence with it. And I think that's all great. But sometimes their enthusiasm has outpaced their level of study. So they're louder than their studies. They're more on Facebook than they are on the books that they should be reading. And so, there can be this overconfidence, because I think that, and it's not to say that any of us has to have like a PhD in this stuff, but for any given apologetics argument, there's volumes upon volumes upon volumes that you would need to read to really be well versed in the ins and outs of that argument, and so it's helpful to know the counterpoints and what Derek Parfit said, and what, it's helpful to know all those things. And if you don't, then you can kind of overshoot yourself to where you're stating things maybe more simplistically and more bluntly than you ought to. But I think that comes with maybe just kind of being more seasoned, being able to pump the brakes, still be confident, but at the same time being confident from a position of like humility and really being well-rounded in what it is that you're studying. So I guess there's a long way of saying yes. I've seen it.
No, I asked for an explanation. Good.
Yeah.
All good. Yeah.
That's
what do you think? What do you think, Phoenix?
Definitely. I mean, there's no question. The less you know about something, the more accomplished you feel. It's almost like you're scaling a mountain, right? But if you think the mountain is only, so many feet high and you've reached to the top, you're going to feel pretty awesome. Like, I crushed this. But you have no idea that there's actually there's a whole other series of peaks beyond that you don't even know is there. And all the people up there are kind of looking down at you like, ooh, cringing, like, oh, keep going, keep studying. Like, this is not where the trail ends. But no, you made me think of something as you were talking, and I don't know if it'll come back. I know. It's what I do see, and I've been cautioned against myself as someone studying this, and I'm sure you've been cautioned against it too, is not overstating your case, not overstating the position or the evidence that we have for certain things. To stand up and say, for example, we have undeniable evidence for the resurrection of Christ. It's irrefutable. I'd be like, well, I think you're overstating your case. I think it's very convincing, but can you poke holes in it? Sure. You can poke holes in pretty much anything. I'm not worried about my faith or my confidence in the fact that it happened crumbling, but it definitely, I think it does more harm than good to overstate one's evidence, maybe not one's confidence. You can be confident in something, but not overstate how much data we actually have to support something. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's well said. Yeah, I love that. Because we need to, that's going to go into an area I'm not going to take you guys into today.
Okay.
For Christians, I mean, maybe we'll cover it, but we need to think on the idea of certainty. And J.P. Moreland talks about that a lot. Like, what is certainty? What is probability? Possible? You know, like he goes into our different levels of knowledge and what we can expect to have as a human. And I encounter in the Christian public realm the overstated case a lot, in that when I studied epistemology in my PhD studies, people don't seem to understand theories of knowledge and how do you know what you know? How did you come to this? Where is this coming from? Did you only go so far? So you were talking about getting up there's a mountain there and you're only climbing to this. And then you think, oh, I've achieved the mountain. But actually, those guys that did all that research, the PhDs back there behind all that distilled knowledge that we're using is, they're the ones that did the really hard climbing up there. So acknowledging that is important. But this makes me think of.
Can I say something about that though? Yeah,
sure.
I do kind of want to nerd out on that a little, because it's something I've actually thought about. So I'm not sure where I land, when it comes to internalism or externalism, but one of the things that I've grown to appreciate is just like virtue epistemology, and just the value of that, like, approaching what you claim to know from an epistemically virtuous place, in particular faithfulness. I've been thinking about this notion of faithfulness, like that particular virtue in light of epistemology, like your commitment essentially to truth, right? And I think that when kind of going back to something we were talking about earlier, just this notion of like kind of how we evaluate ourselves as apologists and what we should or shouldn't know, or do or don't know, who's a great apologist and who sucks. Like, I think really that that virtue of faithfulness, to me should be front and center. Like, it may not be the case that I know all that I could know, but if I'm faithful to know, then I feel like that, that needs to weigh into how I self-assess, myself as an apologist. There's a bunch of stuff that I don't know, right now. I know much more than I did 10 years ago. And, 10 years from now, prayerfully, I'll know much more than I do now. But I think that the consistency is in, like, maybe what closes the gap between like my ideal self as an apologist and where I am now is that faithfulness. Does that make sense at all? Or
yes, it does.
You mean like consistently showing up and putting in the effort and just doing the best you can.
Yeah, just that commitment to being excellent, for the glory of God ultimately. For applying that notion of faithfulness to my pursuit of truth. You see what I'm saying? Like, and doing my due diligence.
I mean, Jesus said that his people were the people of the truth, right? They're the ones who faithfully pursue the truth. So that's, there's a whole talk that I give on loving truth, as it's a profound challenge. Like, it's not as easy as we like to make it out to be. It actually involves this commitment, this faithfulness to the truth, which is a lot harder than, I don't know, that maybe sometimes we have it's a lot harder than we have space for sometimes in our current American culture, because it's just struggle bus to survive sometimes. And committing that level of faithfulness to truth it's hard. It takes a lot of time.
Because truth is dangerous. I think truth is dangerous in that, if you come to know something about yourself that is true, that ought to be different, then that can shake your whole, identity schema, so to speak.
Now you got to deal with it.
Truth can rattle nations. Like, truth is potent. And so it should be, treated with care. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So let's, on this notion of truth, you guys, have you ever been like mid-conversation and realized you're out of your depth?
Oh, yeah, sure.
I'm going to Phoenix first for that one.
That's a great question. You know what? I can't think of an in-person conversation where that's happened because I avoid talking to people. I am like an extroverted introvert. I am not the person that's going to strike up a conversation next to a stranger. But online, yes, online. I have seen someone make a point or an argument, and I don't know them at all. So I've got no, for me, there's no risk. I can critique their point without compromising my connection to them or relationship to them, but be respectful. And I'll go in and they'll counter with so much information. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. And now I'm in a position where I have to bow out and and say, well, you made a good point, and humbly back off, or take the coward's road and just not respond because that's the internet for you. But no, that's definitely, I have definitely encountered that, particularly, and I'm going to be totally honest, in political conversations. If I'm discussing something, let's face it, we all tend to be bombarded with the information our preferred party feeds us. And because we're stuck in that algorithm, we think, well, obviously everybody knows this about Trump or Biden, whichever. And then when you actually get a glimpse of some of the reports that the other side you have to sort of think, oh gosh, well, I actually didn't see that headline. I better go check it, and eat a piece of humble pie.
Yeah.
Like, wow, maybe the media isn't actually giving me both sides, which we of course know, but in those moments, it's humbling to be reminded. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really good. That's really good. Yeah, I mean, same boat. I mean, I can think of several times where I realized, like, you know what, maybe this, this conversation is too rich for my blood. This is like, I've encountered that certainly in like Christian philosophy circles for sure. But actually, recently, I was talking with an older gentleman, at our church, and it just became very clear, like within the first 2 minutes, that just his level of like spiritual maturity and wisdom was way above like mine. And it's like, this is not one of those meetings where I need to say a whole lot. I just need to shut up for a minute. Whatever he says, that's what it is. I'm just going to shut up. And in some ways, to kind of use a biblical reference, I think I might even mispronounce it, but I think in the book of Job, there's this character Elihu, who interjects in the conversation as like this young guy that has all the answers and is kind of like, throwing his weight around in the convo. And I think all of us can be Elihu at times, when we think we know more than what we know, the Dunning-Kruger effect maybe. And it's like, you know what, maybe the better thing to do is just to kind of fall back to fall on my sword a bit and just admit that I have no idea what I'm talking about, or I'm just, or maybe the person's giving me something to think about. But it can be difficult, when you're in the public, and particularly if you have a public, like all of us, like we have public platforms that revolve around, just being right, to some people's perspective, like, our whole job is to be right about stuff. And then it becomes this pressure. It's like, well, wait a minute. If my identity is wrapped up in being right, then what does it mean for me to be wrong right now? And that can be a really challenging pill to swallow,
Yeah. And that is a perfect way to ask, like, to segue into that content was perfect for this next question I want to ask you. And I may start with you, Adam, since you're on this right now, which is there's this concept from Zen Buddhism, which I'm not promoting Zen Buddhism. So Christians, I'm not promoting Zen Buddhism. There's a concept, a practice called Shoshin, and it means beginner's mind. So basically that we're to stay curious, stay open, and don't assume you've got it all figured out. So approach things with openness as if you were a beginner, even if you are experienced. So can you tell us, like, how would that mindset change how we approach apologetics, or even these public platforms, if you want to comment on that, or even in the church, if you want to comment on that? So whichever direction you want to take it there, Adam, go.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I don't believe in syncretism, so I don't know anything about Buddhists. I don't.
Stop pushing your Buddhist beliefs on us.
Right. Yeah, exactly. throwing your Buddhist
I
beliefs
know,
around.
I know.
That's a weird hill to die on, but no, I think that
Yeah.
no, I think it's essential. I think staying curious is essential. I think it's a sign of intellectual humility,
Mm,
intellectual honesty, maybe just being able to just recognize that no matter how much you study, no matter how much you've thought about something, there's at least a possibility that somebody else has considered something that you hadn't. You have to at least
mm,
entertain the possibility that maybe you've missed a spot. And I think if you can't keep that possibility open to yourself, then maybe you do fall short of those epistemic virtues that we've kind of laid out before, right? And so
Yeah.
the other piece is too, and I tell you who's really good at this is Josh Rasmussen. I've seen him exchange with people online, and just even in his writings, I think inviting people into your process of understanding an issue can be really powerful. It can be a bridge where both you and your interlocutor, or just I don't even, maybe not even use a word that's strong, but just the person that you're dialoguing with, like where both of you can grow from the conversation. It's
Yeah.
pretty off-putting if everything is a debate. Everything is about trying to advance a particular position. But if you welcome somebody else in to and like genuinely into how you're thinking through something, then it's empowering to them, and I think it opens them up then to welcome you into how they're thinking about it. And there can be
Yeah.
maybe some ground gain on both ends. Yeah.
yeah. I was gonna say I think when we realize the value of simply understanding different perspectives, we can maybe just chill a little bit more when we're talking to people that we think are wrong, as though the conversation isn't going anywhere because they're wrong, I'm right, and they're not getting my point. Um, I I I don't know when I had this transition. But for a while now, I've really, even though a person I'm talking to may have the most bizarre take on things, and I might think they're completely wrong and be able to prove they're completely wrong, um, I don't need to, one, in that moment, because there's so much value for me to get a deeper understanding of why they think that and
Yeah.
what led them there. And so, like, that itself is, as a book for me to read, is richness for me, because it helps me figure out how to frame whatever it is I know that I think is correct, because we all think we're correct, right? That's why we hold the beliefs we do. It's not
Yeah.
arrogant to think you're correct. You'd be a fool if you're like, well, I know I'm wrong, but I'm holding to it. Um,
Yeah. Of course.
we all think we're right. But there's so much to learn in how you can better explain your point once you understand, well, what are the obstacles and what's the path this other person took to land where they've landed. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. That's it. That's great. That's also talking about the process. Like let
Right.
people into your messy little process of getting to the
Exactly.
end, because that builds camaraderie, it builds fellowship. Adam was talking about that either on this show or a previous show
Mm.
about how the differences help us really think through things, and it matures
Yeah.
us, the
Yeah.
differences we encounter. And then Adam's just laying down a C.S. Lewis idea. So watch out, everybody. Evangelicals quote C.S. Lewis. Here we go. Can we have a show without it? I thought about putting like a bell or a counter or something like that.
Oh,
Yeah.
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 But you did in the Four Loves when C.S. Lewis, I'm going to butcher the quote, but it's the idea that when we find a person who has the same question that we found,
Mm.
we could have a friend. That's our friend.
Yeah.
They don't have to end up, we don't
Mm.
have to end up with the same answer. Just somebody really cares about thinking about what we're thinking about, right? They have the same
Yeah.
question too. So he
Right.
talked about that you can find a friend there. And so
I
there
mean,
you
isn't
go.
that kind of the fear though? Like, I mean, when you think about it, I mean, that's so powerful. Like, I feel like so much of the public discourse revolves around rivalry rather than like
Mm.
friendship. It's more so about trying to
Oh,
batter
yeah.
somebody else with your headlines and so on and so forth. Like you were talking about, Phoenix. Rather than
Yeah.
hey, if this person cares about this issue or this question, then like why couldn't that be a common ground, like a bridge, that leads somewhere positive, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. The only thing that makes me resistant when we talk about having a beginner's mind and keeping that humility and always being open to learning. The only resistance I have to that is when it's pushed too far into the area of, well, nobody can know for sure anything, right? When it goes too far and we're just perpetually in search mode and we're never allowed to land on well, this is actually the answer.
Right.
Because we do actually have answers to some things, but then there are others that we need to have a softer response to. So yeah.
Well, you're into Dallas Willard. You have a reason to not only doubt your beliefs and believe your doubts, but also believe your beliefs and doubt your doubts.
There you go. Yeah.
That's good.
So it's not that we're emphasizing truth is relative. That's not what we're saying. It's just that exploration of ideas together to get at truth is part of growing and maturing as a Christian, like you're saying. Okay, so what should we reasonably expect from an apologist in terms of accuracy and integrity?
The second one's more important, right? The second one's more important.
That
was
the eyebrow of disdain.
I'm kind of wondering what's behind that eyebrow. Like you would, not trying to get you the name drop, but it just seems like there may be some experiences that raise that eyebrow a bit,
No, actually, unfortunately, numerous public pastors come to mind, not apologists, but that's just because there's more of them and they tend to rise higher and then fall harder when it happens. My goodness, if pastors and apologists, if they knew half of what they profess to know but maintained an untarnished level of integrity, the world would be a better place.
It's tough,
for sure. Right? Yeah, that's a tough one. But in terms of expectation of what they should know, I think of course, I think everybody needs to have grace, because even people who actually do have their areas of specialty, which I am not, I don't think I am, but people who really, really do have their PhDs in a very narrow thing, whether it be manuscripts or an area of science, things like that, we're going to expect more from them. But even with that level of specialty, they can have a bad day. They can just blank on things. And let's also be honest, some of the best apologists out there are aging out right now. Give the poor people some grace. They may not remember where their socks are. But they're still incredible minds.
Those guys, yeah.
I don't even need to say names, but yeah.
Right.
And we now go to Adam.
I got caught up in the aging grace. I forgot the question now.
What should we expect? Like, what should we reasonably expect from an apologist in terms of accuracy and integrity?
I'm going to just lean, where Phoenix was saying. Like, I think the latter is more important than the former. Like, it's more important for you to live morally than to be able to make the moral argument, right? Like if you're able to know the ins and outs of
that is a bumper sticker.
That's a meme.
Yeah.
Adam's dropping the memes on the show.
but I think it's true, and likewise, I mean, like if we're saying that, hey, we're making a case that this maximally great being exists, right? How crazy would it be to spend your whole life making that case and then to live like that's not true, right? So if this God exists, then he's watching your every move. Not say he's like kind of, waiting for you to slip up, but like where's the fear of God? I guess the accuracy is important. We should be people of truth. We should be people who pursue truth as best we can. And I think that particularly if you're in a position where you're trying to convey truth to others, then you do need to do your due diligence in doing that as accurately and well as you can. But I don't think that I'm sure that most apologists are trying to do that. I'm sure that that's what they're trying to do. I don't think anybody's out here, just kind of flippantly throwing any kind of content out there in the name of apologetics. I think what's more important is that we make sure that our character is right. because
Hmm.
I don't know. I mean, if we want to go name names, we can. But I mean,
Mention.
I think there is a huge cautionary tale on the
Oh
table,
yeah.
for the apologetics community of somebody who is known for, making apologetics great, if you will, and nevertheless, his lifestyle did not accord with the God that he claimed to be putting before the public square. So,
Yeah.
I mean, to me, I think that I wouldn't want to be the kind of guy that makes it all the way to the end of my life, only to have my legacy in tatters because
Yeah.
I didn't live well, didn't live morally, right?
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
that, laying at our feet is this cautionary tale that, yes, that accuracy, great, integrity, greater, you know.
Big time. I will throw in a
Yeah.
caveat to that. When I said integrity is more important, and I do believe it is. I suppose I'm taking it from the assumption that people are either given correct information or nothing. Like, but I wasn't considering the possibility that you've got a bunch of apologists going around spilling heresies everywhere, but they live integrity. They have high integrity, but they're absolutely spreading misinformation. When I would rather see an apologist stand up and say, I don't know, again and again and again, while maintaining that high level of integrity. Yeah.
Can I
Yeah.
say this real quick too? Like, maybe to your point, and
Absolutely.
if I'm off, then let me know. But I think just the algorithm can be intoxicating, right? Like,
Mm.
if you're that YouTuber, which we've all been in that YouTube social media space, like getting those likes and views and all that kind of stuff, it can really be intoxicating. So whereas you can feel compelled to speak on something that you're actually not really that knowledgeable about,
Oh,
and
yeah.
probably shouldn't, like, in
Oh,
all integrity, you probably shouldn't be weighing in on it, but you've got to get something out that week. You got to get a
yeah.
video out because it's been 7 days, and if you go over so many days, then the algorithm's going to forget about you. And so now you're putting out something that's, probably not, maybe not accurate, and
Mm.
that to me, that's a lack of integrity. It would be much better than to let the
Yes.
algorithm do what it does and just wait until you have something, of value to
Love it.
say, than to compromise that, for the
Yeah.
sake of the algorithm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact,
That's
you reminded me of a proverb. I'll just say it. Better to be silent and thought a fool than to open your mouth and confirm it.
yeah.
Mm,
An old American saying,
There
idiom.
you go.
Yeah.
There we go.
Hmm.
there you go.
Yeah, no, that's good. This past week or so, I follow Lee Strobel's son, Kyle Strobel. He has a Substack on spiritual formation, and he had a recent post called "The Temptation of Substack," and he's talking about what you're talking about, Adam,
Ah.
about
Oh,
that
okay.
temptation to just get something out, respond. Well,
Right.
when you live a life of like thinking through things and really studying things, you start to understand that an immediate response to something means that you didn't really think on it very long.
Mm.
Right.
Unless it's just your field, right? If you're a
Right,
political
right, right.
analyst or you're something,
True.
like if that's your field, that's your field. But he was talking about that need that you're describing to get stuff out right away. And that has always been a concern of mine and I've bowed out of, I've been invited to talk on things that I'm not an expert in. And I've said, I'm sorry, I can't. And then I've been disinvited because I wasn't willing to make a quick snap decision on something where I said, hey, I don't know this subject that well. I need more investigation. I'm not even going to be talking on that, but I don't feel comfortable making a statement on that yet.
Mm.
And so I
Mhm.
was, put from an event because I couldn't make a statement on it. And I think that we're teaching Christians to be
Mm.
quick to judge and slow to,
Wow.
and, like they're not slow. What would be the slow? They don't see the value of the slowness of taking your time to think through something and then make a statement. And
Mm.
all these algorithms, everything you're talking about, they're rewarding this snap judgment, these snap decisions. They're not rewarding long thoughtfulness, prayer, asking for the Holy Spirit's involvement. They're just not.
Mhm.
And I don't know if we know that as Christians, if we're not paying
Yeah.
attention
That's so
to
good.
being
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
intentional.
good. That's
So
good.
true. It doesn't reward balance and it doesn't reward wisdom. It wants
Yeah.
Mm.
polarizing comments and it wants fast polarizing comments.
I think that the algorithm rewards interesting. If something is attention grabbing, maybe even a better way to put it, then that's all that matters. Whether it's well thought out, prayed over or not. It's what's attention grabbing.
I really wanted to address this issue today because of the nature of what's happening in the public realm, especially on social media, and how the algorithms do reward that quick interaction. And so that's why we've, what should we expect from apologetics? What's the secret to great apologetics? Low expectations. I want to bring it down. Like, we got to stop. We got to be counterculture. And that's to these platforms as well, in the way that these services are rewarding people for being quick and being fast and having the first thing out there. And that's really not what our show is about. We're not going to be the first on everything. Like, we're trying to think through stuff and be a little more nuanced about our circumstances. Yeah. And speaking of being more nuanced, as we close out the show, I've got another weird hill to die on that I want to know about. Right. And it has nothing to do with theology or apologetics. All right. This is only our second episode, you guys. So we don't, audience doesn't really know you.
So many hills to die on. Let's go. What's the category?
Restaurants or a food item. When you can frame it however you want, but what's your hill to die? You will defend that restaurant or that food at all costs.
Oh, it's easy.
Oh, Adam's got one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I got one too. I'm pineapples on pizza all day. I am a pineapples on pizza guy. Pineapples. I mean, it's just, I will fight over it.
That is very controversial.
It is.
I recognize it's controversial. Pineapples is a legitimate topping for pizza. That is my hill to die on.
I accept it's legit. I don't question the legitimacy. I do question the flavor. I'm like, I don't like the texture. I don't like the flavor. Yeah. Though coming to the States, you guys love cheese pizza, right? You guys love cheese pizza. Where I come from, cheese pizza isn't a pizza. Every pizza has toppings. You don't come in and order a cheese pizza. That's like ordering a sandwich that's just bread. So...
and cheese.
There's nothing. But my husband counters, he's from the Northeast, and he's like, it's because we do pizza better. Our pizza bases and the sauce and all of that is so much better that we don't have to mask it with all these exotic toppings. Anyway, that's my thought on American pizza. There you go.
Did you have your hill to die on, though? That's his hill.
I do. This is a little embarrassing, but I love Chili's. I love Chili's, the restaurant chain. But almost every time we go, it's tinged with regret because, of course, we get the bottomless tostada chips. And by the time your actual food comes out, you were like sweating salt. And you're so full. And you need a nap. But you're like, yeah, sure, I'll have... But our whole family knows that if mom gets to pick, and also let's be clear, I have 4 young children. We're not going to the fun bougie joints in the city, like maybe I would without kids. So it's got to be some family chain. And with that said, it's Chili's. I love Chili's.
You want your baby back?
I do. And you know what? The funny thing is, I watched those episodes of The Office back in New Zealand before I first moved here. And that's where I was introduced to Chili's on TV. And so I think there's like this whole psychology of, it reminds me of this place called America before I had lived here. And there's just this weird long-term relationship with Chili's now.
Chili's is America. Yeah, I feel like it's like a campaign slogan or something.
Weird hill to die on. There's so many food hills. That's why I think about. Like, one is that beef ribs in barbecue, always, not pork ribs, beef ribs. I'm a Texas style.
Okay.
Yeah. Actually, I introduced another Kiwi native to beef ribs, and he about lost himself. He was just so excited.
Wow.
But that's Texas style barbecue as well. Like, that goes with it. And if you're outside of Texas and it says Texas style barbecue, my hill to die on is no, it is not. Stop calling it that. Say
Cut it out.
inspired
Cut
by. So
it
that
out.
and Tex-Mex in Texas, I will. It's
Oh,
the best. Like I will die on that hill.
I mean, and I'm in the Southeast, and I can say, like, I do have some friends in Houston, been there a couple times. It is a whole different ball game, like when it comes to Mexican
mm.
food and Tex-Mex. It's just like two different genres of food compared to like what we
Mm.
have here in the Southeast. So I'll die on that hill with you. I'm with you on that.
Oh, you guys. All right. Well, brings us to the end of our time together. And so the great food apologetic will be next time. Bring your arguments, bring your restaurant to defend. Thank you all for joining us, hanging out on Weird Hill to Die On, where we try to bring open minds, decent theology, and only a mild fear of being wrong on the internet. If you enjoyed the episode, share it with your favorite overconfident theology friend. You know the one. Subscribe, leave a review, toss us a coin if you're feeling generous, and pray we keep chasing truth, baffling the algorithm, and mildly disappointing armchair theologians everywhere. Catch you guys next time. Come for the arguments, stay for the identity crisis.